Eric Burgess here, and we've been asked to solve this question. A random sample of investments in millions is shown. Find the mean in modal class. So the thing that throws a lot of students off with a question like this one is the fact that there's not like specific numbers. So let's go to a previous question. Right before, we had numbers like this. We had specific numbers, and then you would add all those numbers up and divide by n, and that would give you the mean. But in this case, we're not told specific numbers. We're told instead that there are 12 numbers that are between 0.5 and 3.5. So there's 12 numbers between these, and keep in mind these are in millions. We'll deal with that later. But there are 12 numbers in between these 2 points. So if I had the number 0.5 and 3.5, there could be a number in between, like closer to 0.5. There could be one over here. There could be one right here. There could be another right here. There's 12 of them, right? When we're all done, there's going to be 12 numbers in between these two. So since we don't know them specifically, what we do is we kind of say, well, let's just make up some points for them. But we specifically choose, let's just pretend that all 12 of these are in the middle, the midpoint between these two. So if we had 0.5 and 3.5, we're going to say that all 12 points are right here in the middle. And that is the assumption that we make. And so it's really like we have 12 numbers that are all the midpoints. So if we took, now to get to the midpoint, remember we need the midpoint formula. So that's going to be 0.5 plus 3.5 divided by 2. This is 4, and 4 divided by 2 is 2. So the middle's 2. So it's like if we were to make a data set, it's like we had 12 2s. 2, 2, 2, 2, on and on and on until we had 12 of them. And then for these, we're told 10 numbers are between these two. So we'd get the midpoint of this, and then we'd have 10 of those numbers. And we'd get the midpoint of the next class, and we'd have 3 of those numbers. And then we'd have 1 of the midpoint of this one and 2 of the midpoint of the next one. And at the end, we'd have a data set just like we have right here. Now, of course, since these numbers repeat, some smart people were like, hey, let's just come up with a formula that takes advantage of the fact that they repeat. So they said that, hey, for this one, the mean is, if we add, like we've got all these 2's here. Well, that's the midpoint, right? So if we add all these midpoints together, xm, and we multiply them by the amount of times they occur, right? Because this is basically, we have 12 2's. Well, that's 12 times 2. Because this is the same thing as 2 plus 2 plus 2 12 times. You know, if we were to keep going, we do that 12 times. That's the same thing as just multiplying. So we say, let's take the sum of every midpoint times the number of times it occurs, times the frequency. And then we'll divide by the sum. We're going to add all the frequency, right? Because this is the number of numbers. If we add all these numbers together, because we have 12 2's, we have 10 10's, we have 3, or 12 2's, we have 10 of whatever this middle is, 3 of whatever this middle is. And so if we just add all the numbers up, that's the same thing as n. So they came up with this formula to sort of replace it. So what we're going to do is we're going to take advantage of this fancy formula, but there's a little bit of why this formula is valid and sort of how to do it. If you really want to, you could reconstruct the data. I know some students prefer to do that. And I'm going to show you how to do it using the calculator, and I'm going to show you how to do it manually, like what we just did right here. So first we need midpoints. So we need our xm, we need our midpoints. And so our midpoints are going to be all of these added and then divided by 2. So we already did the first one. We found that it was 2. Next up, we're going to do 3.5. We'll turn this on. 3.5 plus 6.5. And remember, these are not minus signs. These are basically saying we're going from 3.5 to 6.5. It's not 3.5 minus 6.5. So it's basically saying all the numbers between these two numbers. So we're going to add these. We get 10 divided by 2 is 5. And then you'll do the next one, 6.5 plus 9.5. And you'll divide by 2. which in this case you'll get 8. And if you notice here, we're going up by 3 each time. So if you want to, you could just go ahead and use add 3 until you get to the last one. I'll go ahead and do one more the long way. So we'll do 9.5. You could do this for all of them. Totally legit way of doing it, plus 12.5. And if we look at this, 8, 9, 10, 11. So the next one should be 11 when we're done here. So we get 22, we divide by 2, and we get 11. So it's a way to sort of know that you're doing this correctly, making sure you don't make any mistakes. And we get 12.5 plus 15.5. And right when we're done, we expect the next number to be 11 plus 3. So we expect it to be 14. So we divide by 2 and we get 14. So these are our midpoints. Now our frequencies, we already have the frequency column up here. So with these two things, we can use this formula. So this is basically saying take each midpoint, multiply by the frequency, and then add it again. So then do the next midpoint times the frequency and add it, and do the next midpoint the frequency and add it. So what this is saying is our first midpoint is 2. We're going to multiply it by the frequency that goes with this 2. So right, this was the frequency that went with it. So that's 12. And then we're going to add to it the next midpoint, right? That's what the sigma says. To do this process again and again and again until we're out of midpoints. So the next midpoint was 5. And we're going to multiply it by the thing that went with 5, which was 10. And then we're going to do it again. So the next midpoint's 8. And the frequency that went with that midpoint was 3. And then we have 11 times 1 plus 14 times 2. So I just kind of wrote the last ones, but they just correlate to the last two things. And at the bottom, we're going to add all the frequencies up because that's the number of numbers. So that's 12 plus 10 plus 3 plus 1 plus 2. Now the alternative would be as if we had a data set, right? The midpoint's 2 and the frequency is 12. So that means we had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. It's like we had 12 2s. The next one is a 5, right? The next midpoint. And we were told that there are 10 of them. So it's like we had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So this would be, we'd have 10 5s. And then we're told that we would have the next midpoint's 8. And we're told the frequency is 3. So we'd have 3 8s. Followed by an 11. Followed by 2 14s. Because the frequency of 14 is 2. Frequency 11 is 1. And you could compute the mean using your old formula. You could use x, the sum of x over n. It's a really sloppy sigma. But you could do this formula and it would work. But as you can see, it's quite a bit more work and you'd have to write out this whole data set. So it's kind of a bummer. Oh, the calculator may have been covering part of this. I just, wrote them all out. So this is another way. If you feel more comfortable doing it this way, by all means, more power to you. I would highly recommend getting comfortable with this and why this is true, right? Because 2 plus 2 plus 2 plus 2, 12 times. That's the same thing as just 2 times 12. And 5 plus 5 plus 5 plus 5 plus 5. That's the same thing as just 5 times 10, right? We've got 10 5s. 8 times 3, 11 times 1, 14 times 2. So this is a more compact, easier way. And it's just because the numbers repeat. So this is just a little bit easier of a way to do it. And then all the numbers, right? If we were to add them all up, we've got 12 numbers here. So there's 12. We've got 10 numbers here. There's 10. We've got 3 numbers here, 1 number here, and 2 here. So the sum of frequency indeed gives us n. So hopefully you're 100% convinced by this point that this indeed is a good formula to use and it's completely valid and it gives you the exact same thing. The only thing is we're just kind of assuming here that all the numbers are the midpoints. Whoops, I meant to circle that. Are the midpoints of these class boundaries. That's the only assumption we're making because we don't know what the specific points are. So okay, doing this, let's go ahead and pop it in the calculator. So we're going to go ahead and use a a fraction. I'm going to use a fraction bar in this case because writing it out the other way would be kind of tedious. So to get to fractions, you hit the green key, and then we go to F1, the green F1 up here at the top. And there's a fraction, n over d. And so we're going to do 2 times 12. You could just, this is easy enough that you could just do the math and type it in the other way too with parentheses. 5 times 10 plus 8 times 3. Just write it exactly as we have there, plus 11. 11 times 1 is just 11. I'm just going to leave that one out. 14 times 2 over 12 plus 10 plus 3 plus 1 plus 2. So 1 plus 2. So we get out a number. It's a fraction. We can go ahead and convert it. Just go back to that menu, the green key, and then F1. We're going to go to fraction to decimal. And it tells us that our average x bar is equal to 4.89. I'll go out 2 places. Go into however many your professor uses. So this is our average. Now, this isn't just 4.89 by itself. This is 4.89 million. Because we were told that we're working in millions. So just be sure to tack that on at the very end. That could be a really easy point to miss. So just be aware of that. And then they also want the modal class. So the modal class, mode sounds kind of like most. So that's how some people remember it. So it's just a class with the highest frequency. It's got the most stuff in it, right? So here we've got the most 2s. If I asked you what the mode of this one was, well, it's very clear there's a lot more 2s than anything else. If we could just look at the frequency and just say, well, this one's got the highest frequency. So the modal class is this class right here. So modal class is the one that goes from 0.5 to 3.5, 0.5 to 3.5. That's our modal class. Now there's a way to do this using the calculator as well. So in the calculator, you can enter these midpoints in, and you can enter the frequencies in, and there's a way to do it. So let me show you. So we're going to come into edit. So go to stat, and then we want edit. And we're going to need 2 lists. So we're going to need list 1. So go ahead and clear that one. And list 2. Come up to where it says list, hit clear, and then push down. It'll clear them. So for the first one, our midpoints are 2, enter, 5, 8, 11, and 14. All right. So keep in mind list 1 has the midpoints. List 2 has the frequency. So there are 12 2s, right? There are 10 5s. There are 3 8s. There's 1 11 and 2 14s. So the second list basically just says how many of each of these numbers occurs. So now we're going to go to stat. We're going to go to calculate. And we're going to go to 1var stats. Just like before. Except this time we've got 2 lists. And so we're going to need to use both of these. So the first list has the numbers that we're using. So the numbers we're using are 2s, 5s, 8s, 11s, and 14s. So those are the midpoints, right? They're these guys. So we're going to choose list 1 where we put the midpoints. The second number says how many of those. It's the frequency list. Here's the frequency list. It says how many of each one is there. So right there are 12 2s. There are 10 5s, so on and so forth. So for here, we're going to choose the frequency list, which was list 2. So we're going to hit second, and we're going to choose list 2. And because we choose second because it's blue. So we're picking list 2. If you haven't caught on, you just pick the color of the key that you want, and it lets you access to that color that's on here. So the blue stuff, you got to hit the blue key first. All right, so now we're going to hit calculate. And it gives us a mean, and it gets 4.89 on and on and on. The exact same thing that we got. So we can see here a way to check our work. We get the exact same mean, and it's just doing the same thing that we did. And that's it. If you have any questions about this, feel free to drop a comment down below, subscribe, and hit that bell icon for future videos. And we'll catch you in the next problem.